So last but not least, we're going to talk about the revolutions of 1848 in the German states. So like Austria, we're going to see that a lot of the revolutions in 1848 are going to be inspired by what's happening in France. Um, in the German states, we do see that there are still some ethnic minorities, but unlike what we were talking about in Austria, we are going to see that mid 19th century, more and more people that live within the German Confederation are referring to themselves as German. And this is very unlike Austria, where you have these very, very distinct minorities, notably the Magyars in Hungary, and of course the Slavs in Bohemia. You actually do start to see a little bit more of a movement towards unity in parts of the German Confederation, which is going to lead to some of the more liberal movements in 1848, kind of making more demands from their government. So ultimately, how we can kind of summarize the revolutions of 1848 in Germany. We're going to see that, again, they're more liberal in nature. They're not nearly as socialistic as what we were seeing in France, and they want a constitutional government, and they're also looking to potentially unify Germany because at this point we still have this more loose conglomeration of German states in the German Confederation. So who is ruling at this point? Well, we have the King of Prussia, Frederick William, and he was seen as a little bit of a tempered king, hence the mad as a hatter point there. I mean, more important, we need to realize that he is very, very opposed to liberal revolution. It was the Prussians and the Austrians are very much looking towards what's going on in France as bad, but at the same time, he is inspired by the Romantic movement to a certain point, which we're going to talk about next time. So, you do see that he is somewhat sympathetic of some liberal ideas because of his kind of draw towards Romanticism. But at the same time, we're going to see that it's because of Frederick William that the Germans don't make nearly as much progress as they want to in kind of the liberal direction. Also, you can see that he relies on the Junkers for support, for economic support. So this probably implies, since the Junkers were the kind of noble land-owning class, that he's going to be more favorable towards the nobility or towards the wealthier part of the population. Another thing that's important to realize is that Prussia is doing pretty well in the mid-19th century. It has an efficient government. Its economy is doing quite well. We talked about that with the Industrial Revolution, that Prussia was doing a lot of things to kind of subsidize industrial development. And it also has a really strong military. So because of that, we see that Prussia is kind of poised to continue to be a really stable government, unlike Austria. And we know that in Austria, even those liberal revolts were unsuccessful, despite the fact that, you see that in Austria there's a little bit more of a heterogeneous population and a more vulnerable government. So you can kind of imply already that if Germany is in a more stable place politically and economically, then the revolutions there are much less likely to be successful. But still, we see that the Germans, the more liberals in Germany, are going to kind of follow the French, that the French revolutions in 1848 are going to lead to some riots in some of the more minor German states. And we're not yet at the point, this is kind of an idea that is inspired by the 1848 revolutions. Still, many people, even if they're kind of nationalistic in German states, you don't really see until 1848 any kind of articulation of the idea that there should be full unification between Prussia and all these Germanic states. This is an idea that's kind of born in the revolutions of 1848. Now, in Austria, we saw that revolts were relatively effectively squashed by the Prussian and Austrian army, as well as the Russians, when they came in to assist the Emperor of Austria to kind of squash those revolts. In Germany, it's not exactly the same. Now, because the German revolts take place after the Austrians, these armies are already sort of distracted, all right? The Austrians can't respond because the Vienna Revolution led to Metternich's escaping the country, right? And the Austrian army is is unable to respond to what's going on in Prussia because it's busy with its own revolts. So Austria is preoccupied. Also, there are riots that are taking place in Berlin. So we're going to see that, and Berlin is in Prussia, right? Not in the Austrian states. I'll show you a map in just a moment. But just realize that because there are revolts going on in Berlin, this means, okay, Prussia is going to be successful there in suppressing the revolutionaries. And this is where it gets a little bit confusing, all right? Prussia actually, if their army had been left to their own devices, they probably would have been able to put down the revolutions in Berlin quite handily. However, the King of Prussia, Frederick William, decides to withdraw the troops, and because of this, this actually gives the Prussian liberals a huge victory. All right, so you might ask, why would the King of Prussia actually be kind of sympathetic towards the liberals in this instance? I mean, basically, this allows revolutions in Berlin to continue, and also it's going to make other princedoms throughout the German Confederation start to collapse. All right, so because Prussia is pulling its military out of some of these revolutions, this kind of gives revolutionaries or liberals the idea that they actually can have an influence in the government in Prussia. So we'll see how these mixed signals that Frederick William is sending out ultimately are going to result. But because Frederick William pulls out the military in Berlin, and he also is willing to allow this National Assembly gather in Frankfurt. All right, so what this is it's so the Frankfurt Assembly, very, very important liberal movement. It's a self-appointed group of liberals, and they assemble in Frankfurt, but they're from all over the states in the German Bund. Remember the German Confederation, right? So again, we'll look at a map of this in a moment, but just because it exists in Frankfurt, it is still being represented by people all over the German Confederation. So how come the German Confederation is able to actually meet? Well, a lot of this is because the Prussian government has stopped resisting these liberal revolts. So basically, this really, really excites the German liberals. And when they establish their National Assembly, they push for a lot of liberal ideas in constitution that they are writing in the National Assembly, in the Frankfurt Assembly. So here are some of the things that they want to do in their liberal constitution that they are writing. They want universal suffrage. They also, most of the delegates that are in the Frankfurt Assembly are from the middle class. So again, it's very liberal. It's not socialistic in nature. You are going to see the people debate who should rule the future state of Germany. Some people argue that the Austrian Habsburgs should rule it, and other people argue that the Prussian Hohenzollerns should rule. Now, for the Frankfurt Assembly, they actually choose an Austrian Habsburg ruler. They choose the Archduke John instead of choosing the King of Prussia. But we're going to see eventually how the King of Prussia is going to get involved again with this. But you could ask, why did they choose a Habsburg ruler instead of the King of Prussia to rule the Frankfurt Assembly part of Germany? Well, part of it is because he was a liberal sympathizer, unlike the King of Prussia, who was pretty anti-liberal, and also because the Austrian Habsburgs, or sorry, the Frankfurt Assembly also cannot guarantee that it's going to get support from the Prussian army. So because of that, they choose a Habsburg instead to govern them. Okay, so Frankfurt Assembly, just a little image there. So when the Frankfurt Assembly meets and is starting to organize this constitution, effectively what this means is that for a period of time you have three Germanies in existence. Right, first, and all of these Germanies are in the borders of the German Confederation. So this is going to kind of limit the degree of unity that can exist in Germany at this point. All right, so the Frankfurt Assembly is The Frankfurt Assembly is this area that's represented in gold here. You have Prussia in green and the Austrian Empire. Again, it is of course part of the German Confederation, represented in purple. Remember that Austria was traditionally the president of the government in the German Confederation. All right. And also, you notice that Vienna, Berlin, and Frankfurt, all three of these are a site of a liberal revolt. So basically, this kind of shows us that there is little unity that exists in the German Confederation at this time. Um, so ultimately, what's going to happen to the Frankfurt Assembly? Well, the Prussians are actually going to kind of resurge, and they disagree with a lot of the provisions that the Frankfurt Assembly has put together for its constitution. All right. One of the things that they do together, though, which causes a lot of other countries to start to oppose the Frankfurt Assembly, is they want to get some more land. Okay, so the Frankfurt Assembly wants to invade this area of Denmark way up here that is called Schleswig-Holstein. So the Frankfurt Assembly appeals to the Prussian army to try to annex this portion of Denmark to become part of the Frankfurt Assembly. All right, so Prussia actually does go along with it. They declare war on Denmark. And what this does, well, first off, it shows us that the Frankfurt Assembly is very nationalistic in nature. The reason why they want Schleswig-Holstein is because there are German-speaking people that live there, and they argue that it should be part of their new country. But there's a pretty significant reaction against what happens here. So basically, other liberal countries are really horrified with the fact that the Frankfurt Assembly is willing to trying to take land from another country. Britain and Russia actually threatened to go to war with Prussia to stop this. And then Prussia decides actually to have its own separate peace with Denmark, so it kind of abandons. Sorry, this is blocked out here by the map. But basically, what the Prussian army does is it basically abandons the Frankfurt Assembly here. So. So ultimately, what happens to the Frankfurt Assembly after this? Well, we're going to see that in other parts of the German Confederation, there's going to be kind of a reassertion over liberalism in favor of conservatism, right? So remember that Austria was able to crush the Vienna revolts. Also, Frederick William gets rid of this parliament that was set up in Berlin, so there's going to be more of a conservative government that exists in the Prussian part of the German Confederation. And now what the Frankfurt Assembly is trying to do after it wrote its constitution was it was trying to establish a united German federation. It wanted Germany to just be all one country. And after it writes its constitution, it decides to choose Frederick William IV, the King of Prussia, to be the emperor of this united German federation. However, Frederick William says no to this. Okay, part of this is because he still believes that he still claims the divine right of kings, right? He does not believe that he should be selected emperor by an assembly. He believes that this power to be emperor should be coming from God, right? So he says that he would not accept the crown from the gutter. So he refuses to get the crown from the assembly. He wants to get it from some higher power. So you're going to see radicals react against this. You're going to have radicals barricade again. But the Prussian army now is going to be here to crush all resistance. And then in 1849, the Frankfurt Assembly is going to collapse. So again, a turn towards conservatism in Germany as well. All right. So there's going to be this conservative constitution now that Frederick William imposes that actually guarantees royal control of the government in the German Confederation. And this lasts all the way until 1918. But Frederick William is still interested in ruling a united Germany. He just didn't want it to be this liberal state that the Frankfurt Assembly had proposed. All right, so the German Confederation is then reestablished in a city called Olmutz. And the reason why it fails here is because Austria, which of course is a significant part of the German Confederation, says that Prussia has to be allegiant to the Bund, the German Confederation government, and Austria presided over this government. Austria was always the president of the German Confederation. So this is known as the humiliation of Olmutz. Prussia decides to drop the plan to unify Germany, and then Austria remains the dominant state in the Bund. So this is kind of a failure for Germany to unite at this point, and it doesn't unite until 1870.